Hey everyone, and welcome to Redneck Caviar, the podcast where we talk about Southern cuisine and anything that entails. With me today is Kyle Brown, a Pensacola, Florida native who has spent his life around Southern food. Yeah, man, we can just start. You're living in Florida these days.
Yeah, I'm in South Florida right now. I'm originally from up in North Florida.
I used to live in Miami from like 2008 until 2013 or so. You're in the Tampa area.
Yep, I'm in St. Petersburg, just southwest of Tampa, but I make it over the bridge to Tampa pretty often.
Yeah, you work for work?
For work, I work in a restaurant. I'm the kitchen manager at a restaurant in downtown St. Petersburg.
Is that like Southern seafood type thing?
I actually, for a while, I was working in a French restaurant there, but recently I've switched over to a more health food restaurant. But for most of my life, I've worked in seafood-based restaurants and the like.
Well, if you're in Florida, you must. So is that what inspired your veg diet or your more vegan diet?
I really mostly health issues, but other than that, I started to cook a little bit more plant-based, and it was somewhat of a challenge for me, growing up in the South. Everything is cooked with bacon or seafood or something along those lines. So the more I got into it, the more of a fun challenge it was for me, and almost like learning to cook again in a way.
So you still eat a lot of fish and like shellfish, or is it every type of animal meat and protein you've cut down?
Yeah, I still occasionally will eat fish. That's going to be a hard one for me to give up because it's just what I was raised on, and honestly, it's so good around the Gulf Coast.
Yeah, so you miss it then. Yeah, well, I mean, tell me about the restaurant you work in.
Right now, the restaurant I'm working in is it's actually a gluten-free restaurant as well, and we do a couple of the Southern classics occasionally, like biscuits and gravy and stuff like that, which is definitely a challenge to do without your regular flour. But it's pretty varied in the cuisine that we serve there. From anything from burgers to like a buffalo sandwich, which I guess would be more along the lines of some Southern cuisine.
What do you use instead of flour, like tapioca or something?
Yeah, lots of tapioca, rice, almond flour. If
sure.
Worry about nut allergies or anything like that.
Yeah. So it's like, what's been your favorite thing to like cook?
My favorite thing to cook. That's a hard one, honestly. I in the past, probably I would say my favorite dish of all is shrimp and grits. It's a very classic Southern dish, has its roots in impoverished communities in the South, because grits are basically as cheap as a food can get. It's a byproduct of corn, and then shrimp are everywhere. You can just run down to any body of water with a net and catch a few if you want to.
Yeah, you go fishing.
Yeah, I grew up fishing. It was probably my main hobby until I turned around 15 or 16. So from a young child up to like a late teenager, I was probably doing it, 3-4 times a week.
You use it like a pole or a net or a boat, maybe?
All the above. The typical process would be to go out, with a net first, look for some schools of bait fish, and cast a big wide net, and use those fish you get in the net as bait for bigger fish down the road.
Was this in the Gulf of Mexico or more on the East Coast?
Always the Gulf of Mexico. I've actually never lived on the East Coast, but in North Florida, I lived very close to the water when I was young, and I could ride my bike down with the fishing pole on my back to go fishing.
Yeah, I mean, there's a big growing dead zone in the Gulf, so from all of like the agriculture runoff.
Yeah, it's getting worse and worse every year. I don't really fish too much anymore, but my friends who are still heavily into it, especially around the area that I'm in now, the west coast of South Florida, we've been having some terrible red tides and algal blooms and the like, mostly like you said, because of agricultural runoff. But also a lot of it has to do with residential issues as well, as far as I understand.
Yeah, sure.
Grass doesn't really want to grow in Florida because it's basically all sand, and people do what they have to make it grow anyways, and so it's a lot of fertilizer, and that stuff ends up running off into the bayous and out into the bays and Gulf eventually.
Well, it's hardly just Florida, right? I mean, it's basically the entire US, especially with rivers like the Mississippi that carry it all so far.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's the lockdown atmosphere like that? Because in Texas they just like took off any mask mandate, so everyone's just like running around. And here they also like have loosened the restrictions, so there are just like crowds of people walking through the streets.
Yeah, I would say Florida, we probably only had like 6 weeks of real lockdown in I'd say March or so of 2020. And there were no regulations really closing restaurants or, prohibiting in-person dining or anything like that after those 6 weeks. Really, it was very short-lived, and people don't seem to take it very seriously. Or I don't know, it's different for different populations. Like St. Petersburg has a good population of, what they call snowbirds, people who come down from up north for the winter.
Yeah.
And so with there being more elderly people around, it's kind of a little more conscious than other parts of Florida. But my hometown is Pensacola, Florida, in North Florida. And last time I visited, I was probably one of the only people wearing a mask in the grocery store.
Well, is it because the cases aren't that high there, or is it just because they don't seem to care as much?
I think it's the second. Lately the cases have been going down. I don't know if it's just a result of the vaccines finally rolling out, or people gaining the antibodies by being exposed to the virus, or whatever it may be. But there was never really a big air of caution or anything around it, as far as I could tell in Florida. You would even in the middle of last summer, you would drive down some of the busy streets, and the bars would be packed with people, and the like.
Yeah. Have you got it? Or have you been infected, should I say?
So at the beginning of last year, I think it was February, I went to a large music festival, and I came back very sick afterwards for about a week and a half. I didn't have much of a cough or any of those real classic symptoms, but I definitely had a fever and a very sore throat. I'm kind of kicking myself for not getting the antibody test closer to that, because I really do think that I probably had it very early on. And the reason I think so is because my girlfriend, whomst I live with, she did get a very bad case of it. I think it was around August or September in 2020. And, we lived together the entire time, and I would get tested every other day, basically, and never tested positive for the virus throughout that entire time. And she was very sick. So I just basically assumed that I had been exposed at some point prior and had, the antibodies.
Right, definitely. If you guys live together.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel the same. I think I got it like very early in 2022, and it just went by me. Yeah, I don't know.
Yep. Some of us are, fortunate in that. It wasn't too bad for me. My girlfriend, actually, she lost her entire sense of taste and smell, and it was gone for 6 full months, basically. She just recently, in the past month or two, has started to gain it back with some really weird changes to it too. Certain things that she liked before, she can't stand the taste of now, and vice versa.
Yeah, that's odd. Imagine that as like a shock or something. That'd be horrible.
It was actually a nightmare for me, when she was sick and she was like, I can't taste or smell anything at all. I was really worried, because at work I have to taste everything I make, and it would be, it'd be tragic to have to, call someone else over every time I'm cooking and be like, how does this taste?
Yeah. So she's your taster then.
Yeah.
You always been big on cooking, like since you were a child? Did like your mother or grandmother get you into it?
Actually, it was my father. It's kind of atypical, but in my family growing up, my father, when he was young, his parents both worked very late nights, and he got tired of eating fast food or whatever it may be that was readily available, and started to learn to cook when he was very young, and kind of just passed that tradition on to me as I grew up. I grew up definitely helping him in the kitchen all the time, and learning and all that, and I started to cook for myself all the time when I was probably 13, and because he actually travels for work as well. It's kind of a similar situation.
Yeah,
and
sure.
I've always been passionate about it, and really got to start early on in the industry. I had a friend whose father owns a really successful catering business in our hometown, and was able to start cooking and working professionally in the industry at about 15.
That's convenient. And is it like do you only manage the restaurant now, or do you do anything like on the side, like online? Do you like sell your pictures or anything, or like take pictures of food?
No, but that's actually something I've been trying to get more into recently. I feel like that's probably my weak point as a chef, or in the culinary field, is I feel like I can make amazing food, but I don't do the best job at photographing or necessarily describing it. So that's I actually just recently purchased like one of those big ring lights and all of the like to try and step up my game as far as that goes.
No, I've been doing it for a while, and I feel the same. I feel like it takes away a bit too much from the food anyway.
Absolutely, and the people who are best at food photography and the like, honestly, most of the time aren't as good at actually cooking and creating delicious meals and whatnot.
Yeah, the way it usually works is that like a chef makes the food, and like a photographer stands there for 2 hours working on angles and everything.
Absolutely.
For one picture. So yeah, I also don't like how a lot of these photographers use brown paints and stuff to make that meat look browner and things like that.
I've seen some of those videos about the tricks that the advertising companies use to make the food look great on TV.
Yeah, I've never been a fan of it now.
Yeah, and honestly, some of the best food is really not very photogenic. Recently I discovered an amazing Ethiopian restaurant in town, and the food is incredible, but visually it just looks like a bunch of different piles of mushy stuff, but
yeah, I can imagine. So yeah, you said you've taken many trips to New Orleans. How are those? You've taken a dozen. Why so many?
It's about 2.5 hours or less from my hometown of Pensacola, so it's just a quick little shot over there. And Pensacola has some incredible restaurants in it. For a small town, it's really per capita very blessed as far as that goes. But there's nowhere, I think, in the world that has a culinary tradition like New Orleans. And beyond the culinary aspect of it too, just the culture there is so unique, and really, I think a great kind of like example of what the true culture of the South is, where it's just this giant mixture of cultures, from French to Spanish influence, to all the above, and we would just go over there for even just for a night because it's so close, and see live jazz and blues music, and eat seafood at some of the most iconic restaurants there. I really miss that place, honestly. Now that I'm down in South Florida, I don't get to go there quite so often, and it's been tough.
Yeah, I was once, and it was for a martial arts tournament. So I didn't really embrace much of the food. Although what I do remember vividly is all the gift shops, and whenever, because at the time I was probably in my preteens, and so my siblings, so all of us would run to these shops, and these gypsy-looking shop owners would keep these two very eagle eyes at us to make sure we don't boost anything from there, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely a large pickpocket culture in that city that's not really around in a lot of the other big cities in the States. It almost has somewhat of a European feel to it as far as the city goes, because it's so old and the architecture, has been there for hundreds of years.
Do you do any of the black magic stuff? Do you get your fortune told or anything?
Oh, absolutely. I definitely, was kind of skeptical when I first started going there, but after a few experiences, in late night in the French Quarter and whatnot, I definitely think there's some very odd stuff that goes on down there. They have something called the Museum of Death there that's very occult and has a lot to do with the voodoo and black magic and the like. And it's definitely a great experience. I'd recommend that for anyone who goes there, if you have the stomach for it, I guess.
Were you skeptical that it was trickery or that you might get cursed?
More of the trickery. I didn't necessarily believe in, in spirits or ghosts or the like, but I would say that place has had a hand in changing my mind more so than anything else. There's just so much history there, and maybe it's the strong drinks or whatever you might have from there, but I've definitely had some very spooky experiences there.
So they actually told you like some things they shouldn't know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I was too young for any of that, but I definitely like to go back to try that.
Oh yeah, it's amazing, and there's really even a scene of food there that's even beyond like the classic like Creole cuisine. One of my favorite places there is actually a Middle Eastern deli of sorts named Cleo's. It's like a restaurant and grocery, and they're open 24 hours a day. You can go in at 3 a.m. and get the best falafel I've ever had in my life.
Yeah, the small places. You've been to any? Well, you traveled to any southern states? Any other ones as extensively as like Louisiana and Florida?
Mostly Louisiana and Florida. Alabama is basically right next door to where I grew up. So I have gone to Mobile, Alabama, quite a few. And I grew up playing soccer. So we would really travel throughout the entire South, for tournaments and games and the like. So a little bit in Mississippi and Texas, but definitely mostly Florida, Alabama, Louisiana, and Georgia. And Atlanta and Georgia is a really great city as far as, the culinary aspects of it go as well.
Yeah, I mean, I guess Louisiana and Florida are more about seafood. Did you get into barbecue at all?
Yeah, I'm not necessarily the best at preparing it myself. It honestly takes a good amount of equipment to do it right. You need a large smoker or a pit that you can smoke. Sure. But the styles range vary so much throughout the South. That barbecue that we would have in Pensacola would be very different from even 50 miles away in Alabama. But it's in Florida particularly, I think that we have a lot of people who move down from other states, be it just for the beach or what have you. Certainly. There's really not like as much of a defined style of barbecue as you would have as in say like Texas or Memphis, Tennessee or the Carolinas per se.
You ever been to Europe?
I have not. I actually am planning a trip for next summer. I'm really excited. I think I'm going to do Southern Europe, through Portugal, Spain, Italy, and the like.
Well, yeah, in the summer that'd be the place. You ever been to any other places like Asia or something where you took culinary influence?
I haven't been to Asia before. I would love to go, but I have gone to Mexico a few times, mostly, the resorts on the Yucatan, and I'd like to go to Mexico City eventually. But the food down there is pretty similar to that of Florida. It's just a big border around the Gulf of Mexico, so they get a lot of the same seafood and the like. But the one thing I did get turned on to in Mexico is some of the more tropical fruits, like papaya and mamey and sapodilla and things along those lines that we don't really have in North Florida. But now that I've moved down to South Florida, they're a lot more prevalent. I can find a lot of the same stuff from Mexico that grows in South Florida.
Yeah, I was going to say in the South of Florida, surely you get like papaya and stuff. Yeah, it's very odd how like in Florida, the Mexican food, or the food is probably more like Mexican food than it is in places like Texas. It's been very Americanized into like breakfast tacos and things like that in Texas.
Yeah, there's my hometown Pensacola. I think it was a few years ago. There we've had a small little taco truck, very authentic, Mexican street food style tacos. Nothing but barbecued meat, cilantro, and raw onions. And those are the only ingredients involved, really. And it's been there for probably 10 years, and I used to eat there all the time. But I think it was maybe 4 or 5 years ago now. It was mentioned, and I can't remember what publication, but some article came out, with the best top 10 authentic, street tacos in the States, and it was like number 2 or 3 or something like that. And ever since that article came out, there's like a 2-hour wait for this little taco truck, that's just in an empty lot.
Where is that? Is that in Florida?
That's in Florida. That's in Pensacola, in my hometown. The name of it is Sador, which is basically the butcher in English.
Yeah, sure.
But there's definitely a heavy Mexican influence on the cuisine of Florida. Also, something I've learned about recently is in South Florida, the Cuban and Puerto Rican influence as well. Cuba is always known as far as like the influence in South Florida. You've got the classic Cuban sandwich that Tampa is known for, but there's really quite a large population of Puerto Rican people as well, and that influence isn't as well known, but it's absolutely around. Rice and beans is thought of as a staple, in Mexico, but it's even more prevalent in Puerto Rico, and that's really. Anytime you go to a restaurant in South Florida, that's most of the time what your food is going to be served with. Even sometimes at seafood restaurants, you'll get rice and beans on the side.
There's a lot of Caribbean stuff down there too, isn't there?
Absolutely, yeah. Heavy, and where I live in St. Petersburg, there's a heavy Jamaican influence on the cuisine. Absolutely, I tried stuff like saltfish and ackee for the first time that I had never heard of, and they're super popular, and any Caribbean restaurant down here will carry them.
Yeah, definitely. You got any plans to, like, at some point, or like a desire to open your own shop?
Oh, absolutely. The overhead in South Florida is pretty rough as far as it goes for renting space for a restaurant and the like. It's very jam-packed with people down here. So I'm leaning more towards probably doing a food truck or something similar to that. That is, just a little lower barrier to entry. It's a lot easier to get your feet on the ground as far as that goes.
Yeah, I have the same plan. What cuisine would you do?
That's a great question. I'm all over the place when it comes to cooking at home. Actually, right in front of me here, we just started a batch of what's called tepache, which is Mexican fermented pineapple drink. It's made with the rinds and the pulp of the pineapple, so the stuff that you can't usually use. Traditionally it's spiced with cinnamon and a few other things, and just left to ferment. Only for a few days. It really probably only reaches 2 to 4% alcohol, but it's pretty tasty, and we made a batch for the first time the other day. But so we were making that today, but last night we had Asian food. We made like rice bowls with a daikon salad and tofu and spring onion and the like.
Yeah, no, definitely. Does it get stronger with time?
Yeah, I need to work on nailing down what I would like to focus on going forward as far as if I'm going to open my own thing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what's the food truck market. Are there a lot of them in Florida?
There's a ton, honestly. There are quite a few. They seem to pop up in droves. Every 2 weeks you'll see a new one or so, but it doesn't seem to hamper any of their success or popularity. It's almost like when the new guy on the block does really well for a while because they're new.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think if you're all over the place in the kitchen, though, in terms of like the quote-unquote cuisine you make, you probably have like better odds, because then you'd come up with something more unique than what most people have.
And I think most people like to see a menu that rotates or changes pretty regularly. Obviously with some staples, but I think that's one way to kind of run your restaurant into the ground, is to refuse to change your menu or offer new items.
You got to see what works. How big is the restaurant you're working at?
It's very small. I was working in a giant French restaurant beforehand. I think we had like 6 stations on the line. There would be 10 to 12 people in the kitchen at any given time. And the restaurant I work in now, there's only 2 stations on the line, and there's at most 4 or 5 of us in there at a time. But it's pretty popular as far as it goes. It's anything that caters to the dietary restrictions, I think, is starting to do really well nowadays. Everybody's becoming a little more conscious with their diets and how it affects their health and whatnot. So we've only gotten busier as time has gone on.
Yeah, well, in my experience, small kitchens are better anyway. Whenever I've like been into a big one, I really like lose the intimacy with the food, with all the
Absolutely.
yelling and noise and stress. So the small kitchen has always been preferable to me.
I would definitely agree. You have more time and opportunity to show love to every dish that you make and whatnot. And yeah, the yelling and and the loud noises and all that definitely can be distracting.
Yeah. So, would you intend to spend the foreseeable future in Florida then, or would you move anywhere?
I've thought about moving. I've lived in Florida my whole life, so I think that at some point I do need to move somewhere else just to experience in another place. But it's pretty hard to move away right now. My girlfriend is living in Denver, so I go to visit her very often, and I do like it there quite a bit. And I could see myself living there eventually.
Yeah.
But I definitely would miss the beach and whatnot. I'd probably have to take up snowboarding or something similar to keep me occupied and entertained.
Have you ever been around snow? Because like so many Southerners, especially, like they've never ever seen snow. So Texas just had that like big snowstorm, and like everyone was like so many people the first time they've ever seen snow.
I have family up in Boston that we visit pretty frequently, so I've been there in the wintertime and seen the snow, and it doesn't really bother me too much. I think I'd do all right in it.
Yeah, I mean, I probably prefer something warmer, something further south. I hopefully move to Texas at some point within the year if A, the visa allows me to, and B, COVID lets up.
Yeah, I've heard the visa process recently with the COVID issues has been very difficult. At least I have a friend who is from Belgium, and he's a musician, and he usually will come over here to play shows. And he was just discussing with me just the apps. Like he basically would have to stay here, I think is how he was describing it to me if he came because of the COVID restrictions.
Yeah, I mean, it's I actually was on a flight to Texas in March of 2020, and Donald Trump had announced the ban from the UK while I was on the flight.
Wow, how did that work?
Well, I mean, if you're on the flight, they kind of have to let you into the country anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I went back almost immediately after I touched it anyway. But yeah, it was very odd to be sitting in the plane and then have him announce it like before we even touched down.
Yeah, that's a very coincidental timing. Very strange.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, I feel like especially in the South, there were a lot more of these anti-mask protests than there were anywhere else in the US or in the world for that matter.
Yeah, I don't know if it's the heat that makes people crazy or what, but there's definitely been a strong pushback against. I think a lot of it, especially in Texas, particularly has to do with the culture of individual freedom and the ability to do as you please, no matter what,
Yeah, definitely.
something as simple as wearing a mask can make people feel like they're not free, which is a little funny to me, but
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, then another level is just like the conspiracy theorists. They then come up that it's like mind control from the government or something, like that they want to vaccinate you with like microbots and things like that.
There's quite a few of those in the South, compared to the rest of the country. Our public school systems here are pretty abysmal. The tax dollars really go elsewhere. They go to, large corporate programs and things along the like, or even if the tax dollars do make it to the schools, in my experience in high school in particular, we were using probably 10-year-old computers, and the football team would get new uniforms and stuff every year, so they just have different priorities as far as the school system goes. It's
no, I mean, it's like right across the South in Texas, like in the high school I went to, they'd, like you said, buy things for the football team, or like big flat screens to hang at the front of the school. So they're not very good with managing the money at all. What's your favorite northern state?
I've only really been to Massachusetts and New York. And I would say that I like Massachusetts better just because it feels a little older as far as like the architecture and culture goes. Boston, probably one of the oldest cities in the U.S. and it's very interesting for me, being from the South, to walk around a city like that has buildings that are 300 years old. Because I learned recently, it's very rare to have a large building, especially in Florida, that's older than, say, the 40s or 50s, 1940s or 50s, because that was when central air conditioning was really revolutionized and popularized throughout the South. So basically, any building from before that time was just destroyed to make room for a building that could be air conditioned, which makes sense. It's so hot.
Yeah, in the UK, for example, it's the opposite. There are a ton of like really old castles and buildings here, so you can just walk by. I suppose because it would be colder here. But I've always rather disliked the northeast, mainly because land prices are outrageously high. Like it's in Massachusetts and New York. It's like upwards of $10,000, even $20,000 an acre.
Wow.
It can be. So I much prefer like the Northwest, where like you can get land.
Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense that land is so expensive up there because you can't grow anything on it half the year. It's so cold. The growing season is pretty much like 6 months. But land in Florida is really cheap. You can find stuff for as low as $5,000 an acre sometimes.
Yeah, well, in places like Montana and Wyoming, it goes down to even like $1,500.
Wow.
With much nicer land. But I guess with like those northern states, it's more just like the fact that there's not much of it. So it's very exclusive to own there. But yeah, I've never been one for it.
Yeah, I haven't been out to the Pacific Northwest since I was a young boy, and I definitely am planning a trip for the end of the summer, the fall. Actually, I've hopefully this fall I'll do about a month trip throughout the Northwest to all the state parks and the lake, and then hopefully next summer fall will be the Europe trip, because I definitely love to travel, and the COVID restrictions have made life a little boring as far as that goes for the past year and a half.
You'd be driving there, right?
For the one in the States, yes, I would probably fly to meet my girlfriend in Colorado and Denver, and we would drive from there.
Yeah, I mean, fall is the time to go with all the forests they have there.
Absolutely, yeah. I'd like to go to Yellowstone and Yosemite and Death Valley and the like. I have some friends up near Mount Shasta in Northern California, and it looks like a very beautiful area, so I'll probably end up there too.
Yeah, it's definitely on the top of my list as soon as I get there to take a road trip, because I guess that's like the ideal American holiday, especially for Europeans.
It is very classic, and it's I'm sure it's probably crazy to be able to go to somewhere like Texas and you drive for, 16, 18 hours and you're still in the same state, where if you were in Europe, you drive for 18 hours, you'd be, 5-6 countries away.
Yeah, I mean, I'm from Germany originally, and Texas on its own is like, I think 6 or 7 times the size of Germany alone. So it's quite intense, yeah. But I like it. I very much like the landscape. It's pretty much the only reason I'd move there.
I've driven through Texas once or twice, and I really do. I like this section. I guess it's north or west of Amarillo. It's kind of gets up into that panhandle and whatnot. And there's some really beautiful, those red rocks and gulches. And that was the first time I'd ever seen a tumbleweed in my life. I didn't know that those actually existed until I drove through there.
Yeah, well, I mean, I spent most of my time in East Texas, and it's very different from the West, right? Because the West is obviously all desert. And the East, you can get anything from grassland to like swamps and bayous and whatnot. So, but yeah, I definitely like Texas. Although the problem with Texas is everyone from like California is starting to move there because they feel the hype. And I'm not a very big fan of California, so.
I, haven't spent much time there, but as I have some friends that live there, and they, I can't imagine paying what they pay for rent and all
Yeah,
of
that's
that.
it. I mean, outrageously high land prices. But I mean, I don't know. I suppose it depends on what you want. If you are moving to there, I mean, Colorado, from what I've heard, is also quite expensive in terms of real estate.
It absolutely is. We were just looking out of curiosity, and especially around Denver, it's very expensive. Once you kind of get over the Rockies to the west, it gets a little better, but it's definitely probably not as cheap as Wyoming and Montana, like you were mentioning earlier.
No, definitely not. I mean, I also, I take a look sometimes, and just especially no surprise, the nicer areas of the state with lots of woodland can get really expensive.
I can imagine, absolutely. It blows my mind, just to think of land being expensive in places where it's so cold. You can't really do much with the land for half of the year. But I guess you won't run into that problem in Texas, especially East Texas.
Yeah, no, East Texas. Well, I guess land is kind of the only finite resource that we have, so it makes sense in a way.
That's true. It's never going to get cheaper, so I guess we should go ahead and buy when we can.
Do you ever take any time farming, like growing your own food that you cook?
Absolutely, yeah. That's another thing that was a big tradition in my family. Is I can remember from a very, very young age going in the garden, and mostly my family would grow tomatoes and peppers and herbs and the like, just because that's probably what we use the most cooking wise. And now that I've got my own space in South Florida, I started a garden last summer, but it was somewhat of a learning experience for me because the climate here is much different than North Florida, where I'm from. So in North Florida, you can grow tomatoes really through to until about June or so, and then starting again in September, just not in the dead heat of summer. But South Florida, they're a winter crop. You really can't grow them past, I would say, March, or so, and you can't really start until probably October. As far as I understand, the tomato plant needs cooler evenings to produce flowers and fruit, and it really doesn't even get below 70, 75 here, except for 4 months of the year in South Florida.
Yeah. Any livestock?
No, I've never had any livestock. Eventually I'd love to have, some chickens, once I get my own land. I live, in a pretty urban area right now, so I don't think my neighbors would be too thrilled with, roosters crowing at 5 a.m. But, yeah, I definitely, would love to raise my own chickens and maybe eventually, some larger livestock and the like. That, is definitely something I see myself doing going forward. I'd love to get some land and start doing that. It's more of a question of where, as far as right now, because it's
Yeah, sure.
there's all different types of factors that you have to consider.
Yeah, before I moved up here, I lived in an apartment in London, like in the south of London, and I tried to grow things, and I'm shamefully failed epically at it. But yeah, I definitely try again. Although I'm definitely more for animals, chickens and things like that, and cows than plants.
Yeah, I do pretty well with plants. I learned through the summer. Last summer, I definitely had to learn that hard lesson. Really, the only thing that survived were okra, peppers, and a few herbs and beans. And it really made me realize why Southern cuisine kind of has some of the ingredients it does, and that's because sometimes that's all that will grow. As far as through the summer.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'll give it another go, especially if I do end up moving. Hopefully this year.
I recently, through the last year, I've been doing a little bit of side work at a hydroponic lettuce farm. They grow, all types of greens and herbs there, and I think that's a really great solution for people who don't necessarily have as much of a green thumb as far as soil is concerned. Because with the, you can get small hydroponic systems even for your house now that really make it almost foolproof. You just are following a schedule as far as nutrients go, and you can grow tomatoes and lettuce and the like very easily in those types of systems.
Yeah, I mean, how does hydroponic works? I mean, I've heard of it, but I've never really gone into detail about it.
Basically, the plants will sit in a very small amount of medium, usually rock wool or something similar that you would use to like start seeds or seedlings. And they'll be exposed to a trough or the like of running water that has, the nutrients that they require. And you're able to grow plants and fruit the plants with very little input as far as or compared to traditional farming methods like soil and the like. And the farm that I was working at for a while actually recycles, I think it's 99.5% of the water they use. So it's very efficient as far as water usage.
Oh.
And, they have a lot of interest from places, like Saudi Arabia and in the Middle East that are very, very desert-like climates that don't have a lot of, arable soil or even water available. It's a great solution for places like that to be able to grow food, because you could set up a large the farm I was working at is set up within old shipping containers, basically insulated shipping containers that have all been converted. So you could set up a giant field of those anywhere and really get almost the same amount of crops that you would from traditional farming methods on arable land. So I think it'll be I think the hydroponics will be important as far as going forward with climate change and the like. Unfortunately, I think we'll see places that we used to be able to grow crops very effectively probably get too hot, too dry, or what have you to continue the traditional farming methods. So I think it's important to look for those solutions going forward.
Yeah, we definitely see that like in those in like the corn belt. Because obviously when corn and soy get planted in soil year round, it depletes the soil very quickly. So that'd be handy for those kind of places. Or do they just like rejuvenate the water with more nutrients or something? Or how does that work?
Exactly. Yeah. So they, it'll get used for, I think, a period of a few days, and then they kind of have a backup reservoir of water that is ready to go, and it just gets cycled in and out. Basically, after the nutrients have been leached out of the water, it gets run through a purification process. I'm pretty sure reverse osmosis or the like, until it's basically distilled water again, and then they go back and add in all of the nutrients that the plants need, the calcium, magnesium, phosphate, and the like, in different ratios for different parts of the plant's life. Yeah. The farm there is really only greens, only lettuce and kale and the like, but tomatoes do really well in that system as well. And I'm thinking about getting, they're not absurdly expensive to get a small home set up for. It's really just a few $100s. And I was thinking about getting my own just to get some experience and try some different plants and crops in those.
Yeah. Wow, man, I think that would certainly help a lot more than cutting out meat or anything. Like in terms of environment, obviously.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And there's absolutely sustainable ways to raise meat. Cows are basically free fertilizer factories. They turn sun and water and grass into some of the richest fertilizer that we can use. So it's I don't think that the animals themselves are the problem. I think it's obviously the factory farming and the like.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it always gets on my nerves a bit when vegans attack you to take off meat as an environmental stance. Yeah,
and veganism, I'm getting more involved in it, absolutely, but it can be just as harmful to the environment as a typical diet, especially if, like you were saying, you're eating mainly corn and soy products. Those are absolutely detrimental to the soil quality and just the general environment. And I think sustainable eating has less